Welcome to One Africa News, your premier source for news and current affairs from across the continent. We're glad you're here. If you're new to our channel, please subscribe, like, and turn on notification to stay up to date with the latest news and analysis. Your support helps us reach more people.
Burkina Faso has been trapped in a relentless cycle. Generate a little power, lose even more to population growth, scramble for aid, repeat. Despite being rich in sun, gold, and resolve, the country remains one of the most energy-deprived nations on Earth. Over 60% of its population lives without access to electricity, and those who do often suffer through rolling blackouts, flickering bulbs, and an economy unable to function beyond daylight hours. But this isn't just an energy crisis, it's a development crisis, a healthcare crisis, an education crisis, and most importantly, a sovereignty crisis. Without reliable power, no nation can build. Factories stall, hospitals shut down early, and schools struggle to function without digital tools. And Burkina Faso knows it. The country isn't simply looking for electricity, it's looking for control. Control over its infrastructure, its economy, and its future. But let's be clear, Burkina Faso didn't suddenly wake up and decide nuclear power was trendy. This wasn't a flashy choice, it was a desperate but calculated decision. Solar power had promise, but panels can only do so much when storage tech is expensive and the grid is weak. Hydropower is fragile in the face of climate change. And fossil fuels? Too costly to import, too unstable to rely on. Every route was explored. Every solution ran into a wall. That wall is what led them to consider the unthinkable: splitting atoms. For a country like Burkina Faso, nuclear power used to be a foreign luxury, something reserved for the global elite: Russia, the US, China, France. But over the last 2 decades, the nuclear playbook has changed. Modular reactors, simplified designs, and international partnerships have opened the door to nations once considered too unstable, too poor, or too inexperienced to even think about atomic energy. And now, that door is wide open in Ouagadougou. But even with technology more accessible, nuclear remains a high-stakes game. You don't just flip a switch and light up cities. You need fuel security, waste management, radiation protection, emergency planning, and most of all, public trust. That's why this isn't just a decision for Burkina Faso's Ministry of Energy, it's a national transformation, one that touches every part of society, from universities and training centers to rural radio stations tasked with explaining nuclear safety to villagers. The bet is bold. Nuclear power isn't cheap or fast. It takes time, expertise, and enormous upfront investment. But Burkina Faso is playing the long game. It knows that once the infrastructure is in place, nuclear energy can provide stable, uninterrupted power for decades. No sunlight required, no rivers needed, just raw, baseload electricity that can keep hospitals running at night, factories operating around the clock, and water treatment plants purifying life itself. And let's not ignore the symbolism. For a nation often portrayed as fragile, volatile, and dependent on others, this deal screams the opposite. It's a declaration. We will no longer wait for handouts. We will build our future, even if it means splitting atoms to do it. But nuclear isn't just about power. It's also about prestige. In a region dominated by narratives of instability, Burkina Faso is now the first in its immediate neighborhood to take this leap. It's no longer content with being seen as a passive observer in Africa's development story. With this move, it's positioning itself as a technological leader, a pioneer among former colonies, breaking new ground. Of course, with every bet comes risk. Questions loom about safety, political stability, and whether the infrastructure needed to support such a system can truly be built. But perhaps the bigger risk is doing nothing, staying trapped in the energy poverty that has defined Burkina Faso's post-independence struggle. And so, the country has made its choice. It will not remain in the shadows of global development. It has chosen a dangerous path, but one lined with immense potential. And to walk that path, it needed a partner not just willing to help, but willing to bet with them. That brings us to the next chapter. Why Russia? Why would a nuclear superpower be interested in helping a small, struggling African nation leap into the atomic age? Burkina Faso's decision to go nuclear was bold, but what's equally telling is who said yes. Russia didn't just agree to build reactors, it offered fuel supply, waste handling, personnel training, legal framework design, and even public education programs. That's not a business contract. It's a strategic partnership. And in today's geopolitical chessboard, Russia doesn't play unless there's more than just money at stake. So why would a global nuclear powerhouse like Russia invest so deeply in a country with no nuclear background, no prior infrastructure, and limited financial firepower? For Moscow, this isn't just about Burkina Faso. It's about Africa, and the vacuum the West left behind. Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. After decades of dominance by France, the European Union, and US soft power projects, a new era is taking shape in West Africa. A wave of post-colonial realignment is sweeping through the region, and Burkina Faso is one of its frontrunners. In less than 3 years, the country expelled French troops, pulled out of the G5 Sahel alliance, and deepened security cooperation with Russia, all while expressing a clear appetite for self-reliance over Western dependency. Russia saw the opportunity early. It wasn't just military assistance the Burkinabe were after. It was technological leverage, economic development, and the kind of national dignity that only full-scale infrastructure programs can deliver. So, while Western governments remained tangled in red tape, lectures, and conditional aid, Moscow offered something different. Tools, not terms. The nuclear deal wasn't born overnight. Over 2023 and 2024, Russia laid the groundwork carefully. It sent advisors. It welcomed delegations. It conducted feasibility studies, structured training modules, and created the narrative that nuclear power was not only possible, but essential. By the time the ink dried in St. Petersburg in 2025, the handshake was just a formality. Russia had already embedded itself into the vision. But make no mistake, Russia's motivations are far from charitable. This deal grants Moscow something far more valuable than money: influence at the core of a rapidly transforming region. West Africa, once considered France's exclusive backyard, is becoming a battleground of soft power. And Russia is claiming territory not with tanks, but with turbines and uranium. Nuclear energy is especially potent in this context. It's not like selling grain or trucks. It's high trust, high risk, and deeply technical. Once you're inside a country's nuclear infrastructure, you're part of their security architecture, their academic landscape, and their policy future. Russia knows that, and it's playing the long game. By embedding Rosatom into Burkina Faso's scientific, legal, and energy systems, it's tying the country's future directly to Russian expertise and supply chains. There's also a broader narrative at play, one Russia has been quietly building for years. We are the partner the Global South deserves. From Egypt to Zimbabwe, Moscow has offered nuclear cooperation as a path to autonomy, free from IMF conditions, Western geopolitics, or green hypocrisy. Burkina Faso is the latest addition to this growing club, and its decision reinforces the message. Nations no longer need to look west to develop. And then there's the symbolism. Burkina Faso's shift toward nuclear power under Russian guidance sends a strong message to its neighbors, especially Mali and Niger, who are also drifting away from the French sphere and showing interest in similar deals. Moscow is positioning itself not just as a partner, but as a model for technological independence, one that appeals to governments tired of being treated like clients rather than equals. But the stakes are more than symbolic. With uranium deposits in Niger, political realignments across the Sahel, and a growing chorus of African leaders calling for resource sovereignty, Russia is placing its bet where others hesitate. It's using nuclear diplomacy to construct a network of loyal, empowered allies, not just for energy collaboration, but for defense, trade, and political backing in global institutions like the UN. So when Russia said yes to Burkina Faso, it wasn't an act of kindness. It was an act of calculation. The Kremlin sees what others have ignored. The future of global influence runs through Africa, and it won't be won by speeches. It'll be won by cables, reactors, and megawatts. But what exactly does this deal include? How deep is the cooperation? How far is Russia willing to go? Forget the vague press release language about cooperation. The signed document is a sprawling, multi-layered construction schedule that reads more like a national transformation plan than an energy contract. It unfolds in 4 deliberate phases, each deeper and more entwined with Burkina Faso's institutions than the last. Phase 1. The moment the ink dried in St. Petersburg, teams from Rosatom's International Business Directorate flew to Ouagadougou to launch a Milestone Zero audit, an exhaustive review of Burkina Faso's legal codes, insurance statutes, emergency response capacity, and even zoning maps. Within 18 months, the parties must deliver a standalone Nuclear Safety Act written line by line with IAEA lawyers, a financing framework that splits costs 70-30 between a low-interest Russian export credit line and a new Burkina Faso sovereign green bond, and a bespoke security doctrine integrating local gendarmes, Russian advisors.
Thank you for watching One Africa News. Kindly subscribe and stay up to date with our latest news updates. Like, comment, and share our videos with your content with your friends and family. Disclaimer: the content of this video is based on credible publicly available information and is intended for educational, analytical, and informational purposes only. One Africa News does not promote hate, violence, misinformation, or political unrest. Our goal is to deliver thoughtful insights, highlight local voices, and encourage informed conversations throughout Africa.